Welcome to our deep dive into psychological safety and leadership. You provided some really interesting excerpts from the book Psychologisch Guvenlik for us.
And it's a topic that's definitely top of mind these days.
Absolutely. The book looks at how psychological safety affects not just leadership, but the whole work environment. What's great is that it doesn't just stay theoretical. It brings in some real-world examples, like how Google evaluates its leaders.
And it even looks at coaching principles, like the ones you see with top performers, like in the Netflix doc, The Playbook.
Right. You'll also see coverage of some timely topics like quiet quitting
Mhm.
and the whole imposter syndrome thing. So we're going to unpack the core principles of psychological safety, see how it all connects with leadership and performance, and hopefully leave you with some insights you can apply to your own work and life.
It's about understanding why it matters
Yeah.
and what you can actually do about it.
Let's start by defining what psychological safety really is. The book describes it as kind of the opposite of a culture of silence. It's that feeling of freedom to speak your mind, share your ideas, admit when you've messed up, and take risks without the fear of being punished or judged.
It's about an environment where people can be themselves without self-censoring or worrying about being open and honest.
It's about people feeling like they can truly be themselves, right?
Right.
And the book highlights how challenging that can be. There's a story about the author. He struggled to just be silly during an innovation training in Dubai.
Yeah. He talks about his upbringing and cultural background. Made it tough for him to loosen up and let go of that need to be serious and in control all the time.
That's interesting because it shows how our cultural norms can affect how comfortable we feel taking risks and speaking up, if that makes sense.
It really does. And it shows that psychological safety isn't always simple.
Yeah, exactly. It's a complex thing.
Yeah, it's not just about saying, hey, everyone, feel free to speak your mind.
Hmm.
There are other things going on under the surface that we need to address.
Okay, so how do we unpack that? The book talks about the 4 stages of psychological safety by Timothy R. Clark. Can you walk us through those?
Yeah. The first stage is inclusion safety. It's that basic feeling of belonging, knowing you're accepted and welcomed as part of the team.
It's that feeling of I'm in the right room, right?
Yeah, I'm in the right room and I'm glad to be here.
Hmm.
Then we move to learner safety. It's where you feel okay asking questions, experimenting, even making mistakes without fear of judgment.
So it's okay to not have all the answers.
Exactly. Having that beginner's mind is important. Then as that safety grows, we get to contributor safety. This is where you feel confident to share your ideas, knowing that they'll be valued, even if they're not perfect.
So you're not just sitting there listening. You're actively shaping things.
And then finally, challenger safety. This is where you can question things, suggest new ways of doing things, even challenge leadership to improve things.
It sounds like these build on each other.
That's exactly it. And the book connects these stages to Tuckman's stages of team development. Forming, storming, norming, performing. It suggests that building psychological safety helps teams move through those stages more effectively.
So psychological safety helps a team perform at its best.
Absolutely. Think about it. If you're worried about being judged, you're not going to be focused on doing your best work.
Yeah, it makes sense. That worry takes up so much mental space.
Exactly. You get stuck, and it kills innovation and growth.
Speaking of innovation, the book talks about how Google approaches leadership. It seems like they really value psychological safety.
Yeah, they do. They have this really unique way of doing things. Out of 13 leadership evaluation questions, only 1 focuses on technical skills. The rest are about soft skills and creating that psychologically safe environment.
Wow. That's a big statement about how much they care about creating that safe space.
It shows that they get it. Technical skills aren't enough.
So what kind of questions are on there? The book mentioned a few.
Well, some of them are. Does your manager give you useful feedback? Do they respect you as a person? Do they value your thoughts?
I like those. It shows that it's not just about getting work done.
Exactly. It's about making sure everyone feels valued and respected.
And that's probably even more important today, since the way we work has changed so much.
Absolutely.
The book talks about the challenges of leading in a post-pandemic world, where remote work and hybrid work are so common, and expectations have shifted.
And it's interesting because the book suggests that offering flexible work arrangements is a sign of a leader's commitment to inclusion and diversity.
So it's more than just checking boxes.
Right. It's about really understanding people's different needs and how they work best.
And if that's missing, we start to see things like quiet quitting happen.
Ah, yes, quiet quitting, where people just do the bare minimum
Hmm.
because they've lost their motivation.
So they're just coasting.
Right. And the book says this goes back to making sure people feel valued and included.
If you don't feel like you matter, Why would you put in any extra effort?
Right. It becomes this vicious cycle.
Okay, so we've talked about defining psychological safety, how it all links with leadership and teams, and even how it can lead to things like quiet quitting. What I'm noticing is that this one concept, it just keeps popping up in so many different parts of the modern workplace.
It's fascinating how far-reaching it
It
is.
really is.
Yeah.
And it's not just a Western concept. The book brings in this Turkish word, merhamet, which means compassion.
That's a beautiful word. I mean, it fits so well with the idea of psychological safety.
The book highlights building a supportive workplace where people feel okay taking risks, asking for help, and even messing up without being judged or criticized.
Yeah, it's about having empathy and understanding because everyone's going through their own stuff.
And when that environment exists, it unlocks potential.
It can lead to more engagement, more creativity, even that flow state that people talk about.
Right. Flow. It's like this deep focus where time flies by and work just feels effortless.
Yeah, almost like a superpower.
It does feel that way sometimes.
And the book says a safe environment is really important for that to happen.
That makes sense. If you're always worried about messing up,
You're not going to be able to get into that flow,
yeah, you hold back.
and you can't focus.
Okay, before we move on, there's this story from the book about the 6 rules from another book called Unlimited Thinking. Have you heard of this?
Yeah, it's a cool story.
Yeah.
About challenging the way you look at things.
So in the story, this guy visits his old professor who's teaching students about these 6 rules that are supposed to guarantee success and happiness.
Right.
But here's the thing. The professor only tells them 5 rules. He says the 6th one is so powerful that he can't just tell them. They have to figure it out on their own.
I love that.
It makes you wonder what that 6th rule is.
It does.
It makes you think, what if there are these hidden principles
Yeah.
that we can only understand through our own experiences?
It's deep.
It really is.
And maybe that's the point the book is trying to make. That real learning comes from doing things, not just reading about them.
It's like the difference between reading a recipe and actually cooking.
Exactly. You can read all about psychological safety, but until you try it out, you won't really get it.
It's about living it, not just knowing it.
And maybe that's the invitation of the 6th rule,
Invitation to what?
to step out of your comfort zone, to try new things, and trust that you'll learn along the way.
I like that. It's like we're all lifelong learners.
And that brings us back to psychological safety.
Because to be curious and explore, you need to feel safe.
Without safety, we won't take risks, ask questions, challenge things,
Oh.
or even admit that we don't know everything.
And those are the things that lead to innovation and success.
Right.
Okay, we've talked about why psychological safety matters, but how do we actually create it? What can we do in our everyday lives to make things more psychologically safe?
That's the big question. And Psychologic Guvenlik has some good advice. Do you remember the Fearless Organization scan? Developed by Amy Edmondson?
Yeah, that's a good one.
It helps you see how much psychological safety there is in a team. And it's not just about taking the scan. It's about using those results to talk to your team and figure out what needs to change.
Turning data into action.
And the whole team needs to be involved.
Mhm.
It can't just be something the boss decides.
Everyone needs to have a voice.
Right. Sometimes it's as simple as starting a meeting by asking, what are your concerns?
Yeah.
Or what do you need from me to feel supported?
Those are good questions.
Yeah.
They make people feel comfortable sharing.
And honesty is key to building trust.
If we're not real with each other, if we pretend everything's perfect, then that psychological safety isn't real.
It's just a facade,
And eventually it'll crumble.
which can lead to all sorts of problems.
It's a slippery slope.
So investing in psychological safety, it's not just a nice thing to do. It's good for business.
It's about making work a place where everyone can thrive.
Exactly.
And that benefits everyone.
The individuals,
Yeah.
the teams, the whole organization.
So we've talked about asking questions and listening, but what about giving feedback? How can we do that in a way that supports psychological safety?
That can be tricky, especially when it comes to negative feedback.
Yeah, it can be tough.
The book talks about the situation behavior impact, SBI model.
Remind me how that one works.
Sure, you start by describing the situation. Then you talk about the behavior you saw. And lastly, you explain the impact of that behavior. Like, you could say, in yesterday's meeting when we were talking about the new marketing campaign, you interrupted Sarah a few times before she could finish her thought. This made it hard for her to share her ideas and for us to understand her perspective.
It sounds like it makes things more objective.
Exactly. You're not judging the person. You're just talking about what happened.
And by focusing on the impact, you help them see why it matters.
Right. It shows them how their actions affect the whole team
And that's important for creating accountability,
and helping people grow.
which ultimately leads to a more psychologically safe environment.
Because when you feel like you can get feedback without being punished, you're more likely to take risks and learn from your mistakes.
It encourages you to learn and grow.
Yeah. And speaking of growth, one of the coolest things the book does is connect psychological safety with flow.
Flow, that's when you're totally absorbed in what you're doing and you're performing at your best.
Right. The book says psychological safety is a key part of that.
Yeah, because if you're worried about messing up,
You can't get into that flow.
you're holding back.
You can't reach that deep focus.
And remember those 3 conditions for flow we talked about. Clear goals, immediate feedback, a balance between challenge and skill.
Right. They all relate back to psychological safety.
It's like psychological safety is the foundation for flow.
It's what allows us to reach our full potential.
And when we're in flow, we don't just perform better, we feel more fulfilled.
It's a win-win.
Okay, let's not forget, building psychological safety is a journey. It's not a one-time thing.
It's about constantly learning and growing.
And creating a culture where everyone feels valued,
And it starts with each of us, paying attention to how we act and how it affects others.
asking ourselves, am I making it safe for others to speak up? Am I really listening? Am I giving feedback in a way that helps people?
Those are good questions to think about.
Because creating a psychologically safe environment can really change things.
It can lead to more innovation, more productivity, and more happiness.
At work and in life.
And maybe it could even help us find that 6th rule.
Now that would be something.
That Google example really got me thinking about all the different ways companies handle leadership.
It's true. Building a team isn't just about technical stuff. Creating that safe space is crucial.
Absolutely. And, I keep coming back to that 6th rule, that idea that some things you just have to learn by doing.
Yeah, me too. It's like the book wants us to actually practice what we're reading about.
No, Yeah, it reminds me of this project I was leading. There was so much pressure to meet the deadline. I was so focused on getting the work done that I didn't really let my team voice their concerns or ideas. I thought I was being efficient.
Oh, wow. What happened?
We hit the deadline, but everyone was burned out. And the quality wasn't great. I realized later that I had created this culture of fear instead of safety.
So pushing for results without thinking about the team's well-being, it can backfire.
Big time. It was a tough lesson. But it taught me that psychological safety isn't just about being nice. It's about trust and respect.
It's an investment.
Exactly.
So what would you do differently now?
I'd slow down and give my team more space to talk. Ask them things like, what are you struggling with? What kind of support do you need?
It's about being more collaborative.
Yeah. And the book talks about vulnerability in leadership, being open about your own struggles.
That's tough, especially in a work culture where you have to appear strong.
It does go against the grain, but the book argues that it builds trust and helps people feel more comfortable taking their own risks.
It makes everyone feel more human, you know? There's this quote by Brene Brown, who studies vulnerability. She says, vulnerability sounds like truth and feels like courage. Truth and courage aren't always comfortable, but they're never weakness.
I love that. It gets right to the heart of leading with vulnerability.
So how can leaders do that? Embrace vulnerability, I mean.
Just be more open about challenges. For example, instead of acting like you know everything, say, I'm not sure, but let's work on it together.
Show that it's okay to not have all the answers.
And be willing to admit when you make a mistake. Instead of hiding it, just own it. Say, I messed up. Here's what I learned. And here's how we can avoid it in the future.
That takes a lot of guts.
It does.
Yeah.
But it makes a difference. When leaders do that, it creates this ripple effect. It makes it safe to take risks and learn.
And that leads to more innovation and success.
Right.
This all goes back to that idea of learner safety.
Yeah. Where you feel okay asking questions and experimenting.
A lot of people struggle with that.
Yeah.
Especially leaders.
Yeah, there's that pressure to look competent.
So how do we create that learner safety?
Leaders need to set the example. Ask questions. Show that they don't know everything.
You can create opportunities for learning.
Like setting aside time for professional development.
Yeah.
Or encouraging mentorship.
It's about having that growth mindset.
And learning happens all the time, not just in formal settings.
Right. Like when we're open to feedback and willing to try new things.
Exactly. Even when we make mistakes.
So encouraging learning can help a team reach its potential.
Absolutely. It leads to more curiosity and creativity.
You know, I'm thinking about the 4 stages of psychological safety and how they might work differently for remote or hybrid teams.
That's a good point. It's something a lot of companies are trying to figure out.
Like learner safety. In person, it's easy to just ask a question or go talk to someone. But online, it's not as easy.
You have to be more intentional about it.
So how can leaders do that online?
Over-communicate, make sure everyone knows what's going on, create more chances for people to chat, like virtual coffee breaks or
Okay.
team-building activities.
It's about making that effort to connect.
And encourage people to use technology for learning, like online forums or collaboration tools.
Making the online space feel safe.
And another challenge is that inclusion safety.
Yeah, you don't see each other every day.
So it's harder to build those relationships.
What can leaders do about that?
Create opportunities for social interaction, like virtual team events or just casual video calls.
Making time for those non-work connections.
And be mindful of how you communicate online. Use people's names. Acknowledge their work. Show that you care.
Those little things matter.
And be prepared for misunderstandings.
Because it's harder to read people online.
Right. Encourage clear communication. Use emojis to show your tone. Make sure everyone understands.
So just be extra clear.
And create a culture where it's okay to ask questions.
Don't let things fester.
Exactly.
And most importantly, leaders need to be flexible and understanding.
Because everyone's situation is different.
Some people love working remotely. Others need more face-to-face.
And some people have other commitments. Leaders have to adapt.
It's about trust and respect.
And keeping the team focused.
Yeah, when you're not together, it's easy to feel disconnected.
Leaders need to communicate the team's goals and progress.
Keep everyone on the same page.
And create opportunities to collaborate.
Working together builds that sense of team.
So even though there are challenges with remote teams, the basic principles of psychological safety stay the same.
It's about trust, respect, open communication, and learning.
And being understanding.
It's been great talking about all this.
Me too.
Let's go back to that story about the 6 rules. I'm so curious about that 6th rule.
I've been thinking about it. And maybe
Yeah.
the book is saying that the 6th rule, it's not something you can just be told. You have to discover it yourself.
A journey of self-discovery.
Exactly.
It starts with trying new things and challenging your beliefs,
Stepping out of your comfort zone.
trusting the process.
I think it's a metaphor for personal growth.
It's about always trying to improve.
And that's a beautiful message.
Okay, let's take a break. We'll come back in part 3 and talk about some final takeaways.
Sure.
Welcome back to our deep dive. This has been a really interesting conversation.
It has. We've covered so much. The 4 stages of psychological safety. Leadership, team dynamics, even personal growth.
It's amazing how this one concept, psychological safety, connects to so many different things.
It shows how important it is to feel safe and respected, not just at work, but in life too.
Without that, it's hard to really thrive.
So, as we wrap up, what are some key things you hope listeners take away?
Well, one thing is that psychological safety is not just a bonus. It's crucial for high performance and innovation.
It's about letting people shine.
Exactly.
And remember, building psychological safety is a journey.
It's not a one and done thing.
It takes work.
Yeah.
And you need to be willing to adapt
It's about always learning and improving.
and see mistakes as opportunities.
And another key takeaway is that it all starts with leadership.
Leaders set the tone.
It's about how they act and communicate.
They need to show the way, like with active listening, empathy, and being vulnerable.
Leading by example.
That Google example was great. Focusing on soft skills and psychological safety.
It shows what they value.
More companies should be like that.
What if everyone focused on those human skills?
It would change everything.
We've talked a lot about leaders, but what about individuals? What can we do for ourselves?
Start with self-awareness. Pay attention to how you act and how it affects others.
Take responsibility.
And speak up. Share your thoughts.
Even if you're a little scared.
Trust that your voice matters,
And listen to others.
even if they think differently.
Be open to different ideas.
And be kind to yourself.
Everyone makes mistakes.
It's how we learn.
One last thought. Creating a safer world starts with each of us.
It's the little things. Being kind. Speaking up when something's wrong.
Making spaces where everyone feels safe.
That's a world worth working towards.
Thank you for joining us on this deep dive. We hope you learned something and that you'll keep working on creating a more psychologically safe environment. Keep asking those tough questions and keep trying to make the world a better place.
Until next time.